I knew something was wrong the moment the new CEO asked me to close the door. After 28 years at AITA Solutions, I had learned to read silence better than most people read code. Evan Mercer stood behind his sleek desk, hands folded like he was preparing a eulogy instead of a conversation. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost tender. "Marina, you're getting older. You should rest." I stared at him, unsure if I had heard correctly. Evan kept his smile steady. The kind executives practice in leadership seminars, the kind meant to look humane while hiding a blade underneath. "You have given this company everything," he continued, "and we want to honor that by easing you into a gentler chapter of life." "By firing me," I said. He blinked once, the smile tightening. "Let's not frame it that way. I had built half the infrastructure this company still depended on. I wrote the scripts no one else could read, patched systems at 3 a.m, carried entire outages on my back while executives like Evan were still in school. Yet here he was, acting as if he were blessing me with freedom. "Your severance package is ready," he added, "and HR will help you transition smoothly." I logged out of my account in front of him, the cursor blinking like it was holding its breath. I set my badge on the table. "Smoothly," I repeated, and my voice didn't crack, which surprised me. Evan murmured something polite as I walked out, but I didn't listen. The hallway was too quiet. No one met my eye. People who once depended on me now stared at their screens as if I were a ghost drifting past their desks. When I stepped outside, the air felt colder than it should have. I went home without calling anyone, without crying. I sat on my couch until the sky shifted to dawn. Then my phone began vibrating nonstop. Unknown numbers, former teammates, managers, and finally a name I hadn't seen in years. Reed Malcolm, the founder. His voice trembled. "Help me, please." I set the phone down slowly, the sun rising through my window, and let the weight of everything settle before I stood up. When I stepped out of the building, the first thing I noticed was how no one followed me. Not a single voice called out my name. I had trained half the engineers on that floor, stayed late with them during outages, covered their mistakes, fought for their promotions. Yet when the door closed behind me, the silence felt final. I walked toward Pioneer Square, letting my feet decide the path. My phone buzzed once, an automated HR message. I opened it. The severance amount stared back at me, 3 weeks of pay for nearly 3 decades of work. I laughed under my breath, the sound sharp enough to sting. A message popped up from Noah, one of the junior engineers I'd mentored. "I'm sorry, Marina. They told us not to get involved," I typed back. "It's fine," then erased it and put my phone away. The streets were crowded with commuters already running late. A woman bumped into me and muttered a quick apology. I kept moving. My body felt like it was on autopilot, like I was walking out of a fire without realizing I'd been burned. I replayed Evan's voice in my head. "You're getting older." He said it as if age were a malfunction he needed to remove from the system. I had built the scripts that kept AITA's clients alive. When management refused to approve a full team, I wrote the monitoring tools myself. When they delayed hiring, I automated patches and rolled my own backups. Half of my work lived inside notebooks and local files, because the budget never allowed for proper documentation. I kept the company running with whatever scraps they gave me. And now they called it rest. I crossed the street and reached the waterfront. A ferry horn echoed across the water. I leaned on the railing and let the sound settle inside me. My chest felt tight, but not from grief. Something steadier was forming, quiet, sharp, deliberate. When I finally reached my apartment, I locked the door, set my bag down, and stood in the center of the room without moving. Hours passed before I even realized I hadn't eaten or turned on a light. But underneath the exhaustion, something new pulsed, resentment wrapped around a strange, growing calm. The kind of calm that makes decisions instead of excuses. I sat down, the room dim around me, and waited for whatever came next. I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. Not one buzz, several, all overlapping. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. Then another vibration hit, sharp and insistent. I reached over, still half asleep, and saw a flood of notifications from AITA's internal channels. I no longer had access, yet the public monitoring dashboards I had bookmarked years ago were updating in real time. Every region was in red. East Coast clusters down, shipping companies timing out, a major bank reporting authentication failures. I sat up, heart pounding but steady. I opened another dashboard, the one only senior architects used to track cascading failures. The graphs were collapsing faster than anything I had ever seen. My phone buzzed again. A call from a number I recognized, Jared. The overnight lead, I answered. Marina. Please tell me you know what's happening, he said. Voice already cracking. When did it start, I asked. Just before sunrise. We lost the token refresh cycle. The system rejected every backup key we tried. I closed my eyes. Did anyone transfer my master admin credentials before I left? He went silent. That told me everything. Evan said he'd handle it, Jared whispered. He told us not to bother you. More calls came in Noah, then Sam from the West Coast team. I ignored them all. I clicked through logs they had made public in their panic. The automated token rotations were failing exactly where I had warned they would years ago. No documentation, no redundancy. My handwritten procedure was still sitting in a notebook somewhere in ArcTech's storage room. Then Evan's name appeared on my screen. I let it ring until it stopped. A text followed immediately after. We need you. Call me. I put the phone down, letting it buzz itself into exhaustion on the table. There was no urgency in my hands, no panic in my breath. I watched the dashboards collapse and listened to the phone vibrate again and again. Their world was shutting down, one system at a time. And I sat in the quiet of my apartment, deciding what I wanted to do next. The next call that came through wasn't from a frantic engineer or a desperate manager. It was a name I hadn't seen on my screen in years, Reed Malcolm. I answered before I could think. Marina, he said, and the sound of my name in his voice pulled something tight inside my chest. Tell me you're at home. I'm here, I said. He exhaled, shaky and unsteady. I had never heard Reed's voice shake, not during outages, not during high-stakes client demos, not even when our data center in Chicago flooded 10 years ago. But now his breath trembled like the floor was collapsing under him. We've lost nearly every cluster, he said. A shipping client in Vancouver is threatening legal action. A bank in Toronto has shut down online access. Our penalties are stacking by the minute. I replied. Can you tell me what's causing it? Your system is rejecting all backup tokens, I said. And my master credentials were never transferred. He stayed silent, and that silence told me he knew exactly what that meant. Finally, he asked, why weren't they transferred? You would have to ask Evan, I said. Reed cursed under his breath, not loudly, but with the weight of someone who had just put a fatal puzzle piece into place. He told me you took an early retirement package. He said it was voluntary. Christ. Marina. He blindsided me. Telling the board I quit was convenient for him, I said. Another long breath on the line, then Reed's tone shifted low, pleading, stripped of pride. I need you, he said. Just for a few hours. Come in. Look at the system. Help me understand how to stabilize it. The board is already sharpening their knives. I was fired yesterday, I reminded him. I know, and it should never have happened. His voice cracked again. Please, I built this company with people like you, not people like him. Help me keep it alive. I held the phone to my ear, listening to him breathe like the crisis was sitting on his lungs. The apartment around me was quiet, the world outside dimming into late morning. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I let his words settle between us, heavy and undeniable, as the call faded into silence. I didn't go to ArcTech right away. Instead, I called the one person who had seen me through every career storm I'd ever weathered, Lydia Tran. A private consultant who'd left the corporate world long before I found the courage to imagine doing the same. She picked up on the first ring. Tell me you're calling because you finally quit. I was fired, I said. There was a beat of stunned silence. Come over, now. When I arrived at her apartment, she already had her laptop open, spreadsheets pulled up, and a stack of legal pads scattered across her table. She didn't waste time. Start talking. I walked her through everything: the gentle firing, the token failures, the global outages, and Reed's call. Lydia listened without interrupting, tapping numbers into her calculator with quick, sharp motions. After a moment, she said, Marina, do you know how much ArcTech is losing right now? I have estimates, I replied. She turned her screen toward me. Try more than $3 million an hour from client penalties alone. And that doesn't include breach fines, lawsuits, or long-term contract losses. I stared at the number on the screen. It didn't look real. She kept going. If the system stays down another 12 hours, they are done. The board will implode. Clients will walk. The company will collapse within days. They want me to come back for a few hours, I said. Of course they do. Lydia's tone sharpened. They fired the one person who understood their systems. And now the building's on fire. Classic ArcTech. I'm not obligated, I said quietly. No on-call clause, no transition signed, nothing. Lydia leaned back, folding her arms. Then stop acting like you owe them something. I spent 28 years there, I said, and they threw you out with 3 weeks of severance, she snapped. You don't owe them loyalty. You owe yourself compensation. I didn't answer. Lydia leaned forward, her voice steady. You don't go back as an employee. You go back as someone who names her own price. Something inside me shifted, slow and undeniable, not anger, not pride, recognition. For the first time, I wasn't looking at what I gave them. I was looking at what it was truly worth. Lydia pushed a notepad toward me. Write down the number you should have been earning all these years. I set my pen to the paper, my hand steady for the first time since everything began. When I walked into ArcTech headquarters again, the lobby felt unfamiliar, like I was stepping into a place I used to dream about rather than the building where I had spent most of my adult life. Security glanced at my face, hesitated, then handed me a visitor badge. Contractor access only, the guard said. I clipped it to my shirt without a word. The badge felt lighter than my old one, but somehow it carried more authority. Upstairs, the moment the elevator doors opened, the noise hit me, panicked voices, rapid keystrokes, someone swearing under their breath. The outage had hollowed out the confidence that once filled these rooms. Noah spotted me first. He stepped toward me fast, relief flooding his face. Marina, thank God. We can't stabilize anything. Half the scripts aren't documented. We didn't even know where the master rotation file was stored. You were never trained, I said. He looked down. Evan rejected every request. Said cross-training wasted hours we couldn't bill. I kept walking. The old operations floor was chaos, engineers huddled around screens. Managers pacing like the walls were closing in. The new CTO, a man named Brian Keller, whom I had only met once, rushed over. Marina, I'm glad you're here. I'll be honest, we didn't know where half your scripts lived. I met his eyes. That's because the team I asked for was never approved. He didn't argue. Reed wants to see you. Boardroom. When I entered, Reed was already waiting at the long table. Sleeves rolled, eyes darkened by exhaustion. The board members on the video screens looked just as strained. Evan stood near the corner, stiff, avoiding my gaze. Reed gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit, Marina. We need to hear from you first. I lowered myself into the chair, the visitor badge catching the light. The power in the room had shifted. They knew it. I knew it. And no one tried to pretend otherwise as the door closed behind me. Reed folded his hands on the table. Marina, start with what you need from us. Evan shifted immediately. We don't have time for negotiations. She should just Reed cut him off without looking his way. Marina. I spoke clearly, without raising my voice. $10 million up front. The room stilled. One board member on the screen leaned forward. Another muted herself, whispering to someone off camera. I continued. Full healthcare coverage until I reach retirement age. A signed statement acknowledging that I designed and maintained the core infrastructure for more than 28 years. And a freeze on any attempts to blame me for the outage. Evan barked a laugh. That is extortion. I didn't even turn toward him. It's compensation for decades of unpaid institutional knowledge. You're asking for an outrageous sum, he snapped. No engineer is worth $10 million. I looked at Reed instead. You called me because your systems are collapsing. You need stabilization now, not next week. I am not returning as an employee. I am offering to consult. Evan scoffed. Consult. This is ransom. Reed raised a hand, shutting him up. He turned to the CFO on the far end of the table. How much are we losing right now? The CFO swallowed hard. Factoring penalties from the shipping consortium, the Canadian bank, and the logistics network, more than $3 million an hour. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend the table legs. Reed leaned back slowly and exhaled. Then he looked at me, his expression stripped of every corporate mask. And the last term I met his eyes. An accountability review for the CEO. Evan shot up from his chair. Absolutely not. This is insane. She's manipulating a crisis she created. I let the accusation float. No one picked it up. Reed stared at Evan for a long moment, then turned back to me. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Pay her. The board murmured approval, one by one. Faces on the screens nodded. Evan stood frozen, furious and powerless. The terms were on the table, and the decision was no longer his to make. The moment the funds hit escrow, Reed walked me straight to the war room. Every monitor glowed with alerts, and engineers filled the space with frantic whispers. When I stepped inside, the room quieted, as if the noise folded in on itself. Noah hurried toward me. We flagged 3 regions that won't even restart. The token registry keeps rejecting itself. Show me, I said. He pulled up the logs. I skimmed them for less than a minute before finding the problem. Who approved a bypass on the security keychain? Brian, the CTO, winced. Evan pushed it through during the holiday rush, said streamlining would save time. It saved nothing, I replied. You created a loop that invalidates every fallback protocol. Brian nodded. Then tell us what to do. I slid into an empty seat. We rebuilt the chain manually, region by region. For the next hour, the engineers followed my directions, typing line for line as I walked them through the forgotten architecture. Some systems were so deteriorated I had to rewrite patches from memory. Others were missing components entirely. This shouldn't have been your burden, Noah murmured as he worked beside me. It was never supposed to be one person's burden, I said. A young woman from the analytics team approached hesitantly. Marina, thank you. We wanted to tell upper management these gaps were dangerous, but they shut us down every time. You spoke up where you could, I said. That matters. By late afternoon, the last region stabilized. The room erupted with relieved sighs. Though no one cheered, the damage had been too deep, the cost too high. I handed Brian a detailed transition playbook, procedures, documentation guides, and warnings they could no longer afford to ignore. He accepted it quietly. We won't forget what you did today. I nodded, removed the visitor badge from my shirt, and stepped out of the war room, leaving the screens behind me. 3 weeks passed before the final blow landed. I was sipping tea at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed with a message from Lydia. Turn on the news. Now. A journalist's voice filled the room. ArcTech Solutions faces internal turmoil after a leaked audio recording captures CEO Evan Mercer stating he fired senior architect Marina Hale because, quote, older workers cost too much and don't fight back. I set the mug down slowly. Another clip played Evan's voice, smug and careless. She was dead weight. Cheaper to clear her out before the restructuring. Reporters, analysts, and former employees erupted online. Words like age discrimination, executive negligence, and governance failure flashed across every segment. Within hours, the board released a statement announcing a formal investigation. Within days, they issued their verdict. Evan was terminated for cause. His severance was revoked. His performance bonuses were clawed back. And every tech publication in the region ran the same headline: ArcTech CEO removed after ethical breach and catastrophic mismanagement. Reed called me personally the morning after the announcement. Marina, I want to say this publicly, he said, voice firm. ArcTech is still standing because of you. I intend to make that clear. He did. His statement praised my expertise, my contribution, and the work that saved clients across North America. He made sure the industry understood exactly what happened. Then came the interview request magazines, podcasts, networks. Some wanted my side of the story. Others wanted me to help expose wider age bias in the tech outsourcing world. I declined them all. I didn't need a spotlight. I didn't need applause. I had what mattered: clarity, compensation, and the echo of Evan's downfall fading into silence. I closed my laptop that night, the weight on my shoulders lighter than it had been in years. I left Seattle at dawn with everything I owned packed into the back of my car. The drive south felt strangely weightless, as if some invisible cord tying me to the city had finally snapped. By the time I crossed into Oregon, the air smelled different, cleaner, calmer, like the life I had put off for far too long. The coastal town of Yachats had always been a quiet dream of mine. Years ago, during a rare week of vacation, I told myself I would retire here someday. That promise had been buried under release cycles, outages, and late-night emergencies. But now I was keeping it. I signed a lease on a small house overlooking the cliffs. The landlord, an older woman named Claire, handed me the keys and said, "It's peaceful here. People come to breathe again. That's what I need," I answered. A week later, I met with the local community college director and set up a scholarship fund, a program dedicated to women over 40 who wanted to re-enter tech. When she asked why the age requirement mattered, I told her the truth. Some of us were pushed aside before we were finished. She nodded slowly. Then let's make sure they get another chance. In the evenings, I checked the news out of habit. ArcTech was reorganizing its entire leadership structure. Reed was appointing interim executives and promising cultural reform. Evan's name surfaced occasionally rumors that he had applied to several firms and had been rejected by all of them. His downfall felt distant, muted, almost irrelevant. One afternoon, I walked up to the cliff behind my house. Wind rushed against the rocks, carrying the roar of the ocean below. I sat with my hands wrapped around a warm mug and let the sound settle through me. The $10 million wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was a correction, a long overdue acknowledgement of the invisible load I had carried for nearly 3 decades. I didn't burn ArcTech to the ground. I simply stopped holding it up. And in the quiet of that small Oregon town, I finally understood what it felt like to choose myself.